Hi, how you doing? Okay, today I want to talk about the fact that this is not the first time that I'm trying this approach to recovery. And the first time I came across this information from Dr. Sarno, I actually failed. I didn't succeed. Before we get to that, I just want to ask you to like my videos, to subscribe to my channel, because there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be angered by what I'm saying, who are going to have a lot of disbelief, and I don't blame them. I understand. Because I've been there, where everything seems hopeless, and anyone who says you can recover, you really distrust them. So if what I'm saying is resonating with you, please like my videos and subscribe. So let me talk about now the first time. It was about 3.5 years ago that I came across Dr. Sarno's books. That's the first time I'd come across it. And I read the books, and at that time I had already tried many, many different things like we all do, diet and supplements, and I don't want to recount, and I've been to countless doctors. So by that time, I knew all that other stuff wasn't going to help me. So here was this fresh look at things, and it made sense to me. Intellectually, it made sense to me. I was not resistant to the idea that repressed emotions can cause physical symptoms. That made sense to me. Another obstacle that people have is they think that because the cause is emotional, that it is saying that the symptoms aren't real. That's not true at all, and I did not make that thinking mistake. I knew that the symptoms were real, but the cause was also real. It was emotional. Emotions are real. Emotions are embodied. They're physical entities. So it made sense to me. So I tried following that approach on my own at first. And then when it wasn't really working for me, I still had a lot of symptoms. I even saw a psychotherapist for 6 months, and I felt better. Psychologically, I felt lighter, but I still had all these symptoms, and they worried me. The symptoms bothered me. And so I started doubting things. I started doing additional research, and I started thinking, maybe it doesn't apply to CFS. Maybe it doesn't apply to fatigue. Maybe it applies to pain and other people, but maybe chronic fatigue syndrome is this other thing that this doesn't apply for. Because Dr. Sarno in his books, he focuses primarily on pain as that's the main manifestation, but he doesn't speak so much about fatigue, although he does mention it. Because he mentions it briefly, it doesn't sink in as much. So what happened was that I tried doing more research, trying to see other ways, and it instilled more and more doubt and fear in my mind. And I came across this doctor. I'm not going to name the name or where I came across this doctor who was a CFS specialist. And it's not important the name or where I came across the information. What's important is what messages I got from this doctor. Basically, I got the messages that activity will make you worse. Activity is dangerous. You have to pace yourself very, very carefully. And that instilled a lot of fear in me. I became even more afraid to do things, not just physical activity, being on the computer, talking on the phone, listening to an audiobook or a podcast or whatever. All in any activity suddenly became seemed even more dangerous in my mind, and that screwed me up. Just sort of getting diagnosed with CFS, thinking of myself as having this thing called CFS, which I do. I have the symptoms, but I started thinking of myself as being somehow broken in the body, and my thinking shifted from unconscious emotions generating symptoms to, just another physical illness that's completely physical. The emotions have nothing to do with it. So that screwed me up big time. There was a lot of stress in my life, and a lot of things happened that I got much, much worse. That's when I really, really crashed. But I stuck to the new plan that I had, which was extreme pacing. I decided, okay, that's the way to go. One thing I did right was I listened to a lot of recovery stories, because I'd noticed that when I read about people's symptoms and how much they're suffering, I'm sorry, that's unfortunate. I'm suffering too, but it made me feel even worse. It made me feel hopeless. It made me feel fearful. So at one point, I started only reading. I stopped reading any kind of research or anything else. I started only reading recovery stories. And that at least gave me the hope and the idea that I know that people recover from this. It's not something that you have to have forever. It wasn't clear to me how exactly the recovery happens, but I knew I wasn't doomed necessarily forever. So I thought that the approach I'd try was extreme pacing. You know, take lots of breaks and just focus on not overdoing it. Focus on not overdoing it. And maybe for somebody that approach could work. I don't know. I don't think it's very good personally. Uh, I improved a little bit and then I just got stuck. So at this point, I was ready to reread the books, Dr. Sarno's books. I reread the books and it just clicked like it didn't click before. It was clear that this is what's happening with me. There can be no other explanation. I had been pacing myself, nothing was changing. And I just felt lighter. I just felt like, yeah, I cried, tears of happiness that, I'm gonna be well. It might take a while, I'll have to work through things, but I knew I was gonna be well. What was different this time? Well, this time, all remaining doubt was gone. Actually, I still experience a lot of doubt and fear, and this is normal. But what happens is there's a part of me that knows for sure that this is what's happening, and that part is stronger than the part of me that doubts, that always instills this doubt and fear. And actually, the doubting, that's part of TMS. That's your brain's way of sucking you back in. So it's a really difficult thing to deal with. It's a very tricky syndrome, but you can do it. I'm doing it, and you can do it too. You can deal with it. So my attitude towards my symptoms changed. Previously, I was still afraid of symptoms. They still caused concern for me, and I was focused on getting rid of symptoms. I was really focused on getting rid of them, getting rid of them. So the focus was still on symptoms. And that's not helpful. That's not good. Now, I am willing to engage in more activity even if I have symptoms. The symptoms don't stop me from doing things because I know they're harmless. And I really, really believe they're harmless. And sometimes when you do activity, your symptoms do increase, but it doesn't scare me. I don't feel like I'm doing damage to myself when I get more symptoms. I get these fearful feelings like, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't have, oh my God. And I remind myself, I consciously say there's nothing to fear, you're safe. So there's that part, that's the doubting part, that's generating all this fear. And then there's a part that you consciously sort of utilize to calm yourself down, to remind yourself. And that takes real conviction. You can't fake it. Maybe you can, I don't know. But for me, I'm not faking it. I know, I understand. It makes sense to me. and I can be pretty confident, at least this part of me that's overpowering the doubting part is confident in its assertions. So if symptoms increase, or if I get a new symptom, because there's this condition always morphs. You get all these different symptoms, and pain and fatigue and brain fog and diarrhea and itching, and all kinds of so many symptoms. I'll talk about it another time. But what's happening now is that I'm not afraid of symptoms. I see right through them, and I know I need to focus on my emotions, and I know it's going to take potentially a long time, but that's fine. It'll take as long as it takes. I'm not expecting a quick recovery. I'm not expecting a prolonged recovery. However long it takes, that's fine. The important thing is to work out the emotional issues, to work out the pressure I put on myself like crazy, to work out different things like that, and not to be focused on symptoms. Yes, they can be unpleasant, annoying, but that's not the focus. Okay, so subscribe. There's going to be more to come. Thanks for listening.